I wasn't nervous until now.
Dr. Shipe, I had the pleasure of attending one of your classes a few years ago, and there are a couple of things that I picked up right away. And the first thing is that your students seem to know exactly what to do. So I remember the class started out in some sort of a pair work or a group work where they were discussing something or looking for some answers from their novel, and then you said something. You gave some sort of a short and simple instruction. And then suddenly the entire class moved their desks together and they made a mock boardroom table. And I mean, this happened in a split second, like it took no time at all. And you started leading the class in a discussion about what I assume is what they were looking for in their books. And the second thing I noticed is that every student in your class was engaged. Every student put their 2 cents. Every student was actively participating in the classroom discussion. You did not repeat any of your instructions, only one time. No one was told, settle down or focus. Everything was calm and super systematic. How did you create this environment in your classroom?
Well, a lot of that happens through repetition. And I was very fortunate. It was a little past midway through the year. So, so they had been somewhat trained to know this is how I do things. And so that repetition just helps ingrain that in them. I guess on my part, being kindly rigid, if that makes sense. Like, no, this is how we're doing it. This is how I do things. And very early, I remember reading something that said at the start of class, give the students a specific task so that they're engaged. And while they're on their task, you can take your attendance and do those administrative things that you have to do to run a classroom, maybe hand back papers or things like that. So that way the students know that they're expected to be in their place when the bell rings, and they should be on right then. There's no, hey, I'll give you some time to get into it. Hey, let me hold the door open for 2 or 3 or 8 minutes for somebody to show up late. So they know that they're going to be on. And as I've gained more experience, I think I've leaned into this even more in terms of get them engaged to do something and then use what they've done as the basis for discussion. And so I find myself kind of preparing less and less for those discussions because I give them, I guess, the tools, the strategies to come up with the questions for discussions. And I think that helps them be engaged in that, what you saw as a boardroom situation, because it's not some worksheet. I mean, I don't mean to dismiss worksheets, but I mean, it's not some worksheet that I've made or found. It's not, okay, this is what we have to talk about with this material. They, in a sense, get to drive the discussion. And after enough years of experience, I know some of the things that they're going to latch on to. There's still surprises every day, which I guess that's also what, to take to a earlier question, that's what keeps me coming back. I still get surprised in a good way by what comes up in discussion. And I know that the texts I give them they're challenging, they're difficult. And part of my task in teaching literature is to teach them how to own it, rather than, here's the interpretation you're supposed to have of this book. Now recite it back to me. So it actually it all kind of adds up. So with the, I guess, the pedagogical strategy, or the classroom management strategies fit with the curriculum I'm teaching and the skills that I'm teaching.
I'm getting a few keywords from you. I'm getting consistency, which is consistency in the instruction, where a student eventually is going to know exactly what to do because they've been doing it ever since the beginning of the school year, right? So it's a programming, so to speak, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's very, very important. And the kids need that.
Mm.
They need that sense of, okay, I'm in Dr. Shipe's class. It's Wednesday, it's 2 o'clock, and this is what we're doing.
Yes.
No matter whatever's floating around, okay, this is at least a sort of a home base.
Mm-hmm. This is the environment, this is the culture, and I know the expectations to follow.
Yes, absolutely.
And the second thing I'm getting is ownership over the material. So they aren't working on resources that are borrowed or materials that are printed. Instead, they are coming up with their own questions, with their own topics, with their own sort of basis for the lesson.
Yes, absolutely.
Is a part of your programming, so to speak, of the students, does it involve any sort of consequences / punishments, or is it just the expectations and the repetitions, especially early in the year?
Yeah. Well, that's usually just a quick little one-on-one, pull a kid aside. That often is enough. A consequence doesn't have to be a formal, all right, 6 lashes. Let me write your name on the lash list. A student will sometimes be a very bold in the midst of other students and with an audience of other students. So just pulling them aside, having a little one-on-one.
What would you say? Give us a sneak peek into that discussion.
Ramez, could you sit over in the chair by my desk, and I'd just like to have a word with you once we're done with this part, once the whole class is done with this part, and then I'd sit down. So Ramez, I noticed that you're not getting your book out when I ask you to get the book out. Can you tell me what's the problem?
I didn't hear you.
Oh, okay. I'll try to talk louder. So you have your book with you?
Actually, I forgot it.
Okay. Well, I have some books over in the corner, and make friends with somebody who has a book, and just get on the right page and put your phone away, because this is what we're doing.
Well, I was too busy yesterday. I didn't actually read what I was supposed to read.
Okay. Well, definitely you want to sit and pay attention to our discussion, so that way when you do read this, it'll be easier for you to comprehend. Okay?
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, let's get back.
Next day.
The
same kid does the same thing. What do you do?
Well, we have another conversation. Ramez, I notice you keep doing the same thing. After the consequences usually are the performance on tests and assignments are not going to be very good. So then I can have a one-on-one conversation with a progress report, a grade sheet, and here's the evidence, right? Let's just look at the numbers. Let's look at the data. The data show, okay, you're not doing well on your essays, or you have a 20% in homework, or something like that. I put the ownership, the responsibilities on the student, and often I have I started doing this with detentions, which I wound up having less and less, but it's very nice. Just 3 questions: what's the problem, what's causing the problem, and what are you going to do to fix the problem? And so for a detention, rather than just have the kid sit there for a certain number of minutes or hours, or clean the blackboard or something like that, because just time doesn't necessarily do anything. I say, hey, if you can write out your answer to these 3 questions, your detention, and we have a conversation about it, the detention can be over in 5 minutes if you take it seriously. And then you have to take this home to your parents and get it signed. So at least the kid is showing to their parents, hey, I've had a problem we're working out the problem. I know how to work out the problem. So I would do the same thing for a student who's performance in class. So I started putting those 3 questions on my progress reports.
That's brilliant.
Because I would hear teachers say, "Oh, this kid who really bothers me. This kid is really annoying. He just presses my buttons or whatever, and just annoyed. And I feel so disrespected by this kid. And so I wrote him a detention so I can stay after school for another hour with
You're
this
punishing
kid.
yourself.
Like,
Yeah,
well, yeah,
exactly.
who's punishing who here?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was what I tried it out, and I was happy with the results. So
It's brilliant
it's a
because
thing.
it's not a punishment for the sake of punishment. It's a consequence that is beneficial and that is meaningful, that is going to have results.
Yeah. Yeah, because ultimately, what we're looking for is the kid to change the behavior, to choose something else to do.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll use humor whenever I think it'll work.
Mm.
So I remember once I had one student who was just really very defiant, and vocally. And so she had a detention after whatever it was, 2 warnings or 3. Well, okay, next one's a detention. She has a detention. And she came into the detention like, "How long is this going to last? I have to go to work."
Oh.
And I said, "Really? What do you do at your job?" And she began to tell me, and I cut her off and said, "You don't have to tell me, because I know what your job is. Follow somebody's directions. That's all I'm asking you to do in my class. How can you do it at your job, but you don't want to do it in the class?" Well, what's the difference? She says, "Well, at my job, I get paid." I said, "Okay." So I pulled out my drawer, and I have like little change, using the vending machine for chips or something like that. So I pulled out a nickel, 5 cents. I said, "Okay, here's a nickel." Here, I gave it to her, and I said, "There's more where that came from if you follow my directions." She just cracked up and laughed and laughed, and it was like a little breakthrough for her. And she not only did she become more compliant, I didn't have to pay another nickel.
You broke some sort of a barrier.
Something, yeah. It was some kind of some psychological breakthrough, that wall. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's amazing sometimes, as because I hear this a lot from teachers, that sometimes a student will come back and say something like, "Wow, you really helped me through something." I mean, and sometimes we know what we helped them through, but sometimes it's also like, "Really? Oh, well, hey, yeah, thanks for letting me know. I'm glad I could help." And I had a parent who was involved with the school a lot, and be like, "Do you remember what you told my son?" And I was like, "I wish," because if I remembered, I don't know, write a book or something about it. Like here's, I don't know, here's the key, but here's a key. But yeah, just taking that attitude of, ultimately the student is responsible for their choices, and behavior is a choice, and just sticking to that.
And I believe a lot of students also need a sincere conversation where you actually talk to them and not at them.
Yes.
Where they feel your care, and they feel that, no, I do care about you and I want the best for you. Tell me what's wrong. Let me help you, fix it or deal with it.
Yeah. Because it can so easily become personal on either side. So to focus on, hey, here's the problem, here's the issue. It's not you have a problem as a person, or I have a problem as a person. I mean, I got enough problems as a person. So yeah, I don't need you to tell me my problems as a person. But it's not first person. We all have we have a job to do. We have a duty to each other. We have a responsibility for each other to create this classroom. And as a child, you don't necessarily realize, hey, here are the consequences of these kind of choices.
Mm.
So it's part of my job to make clear those consequences,
Mm.
right? Because because in the quote unquote real world, right, no one's necessarily going to take you aside and explain, here are the consequences.
Right.
That in a sense, school is a nice experimental world. So okay, here are the consequences you get in the classroom. They're nothing like the consequences that can happen once you're outside of school.
These conversations get out a lot of the baggage that the students have, that sometimes teachers don't realize that
Oh yeah.
students have a personal life, a home life, conflict at home,
Yeah.
conflict at the workplace, conflict with their friends or families, and they bring that to the classroom without vocalizing it. And they're not going to come into the class and say, hey, I had a fight with my mom today, and they carry it into the class. And I think a teacher who sort of gives the space to the student to vent or to release their baggage, they win them over, and they win their respect, and they win their trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're not here to punish the kids. We want them to comply with our instruction for their sake.
Yes.
And so yeah, when a student does feel comfortable and opens up about the situations, then that gives us, in terms of classwork, okay, thank you for letting me. My goodness, are you talking to anyone else about this? Because I mean, all I know is English.
Right.
English literature.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that you need more than poetry, and that you are you talking to the counselors,
Exactly.
and if not, then well, I'm going to have a conversation with the counselors, just so you know. And now, okay, so you're having some issues at home that are preventing you from doing the schoolwork. So let's take a look at this progress report, and let's see, okay, what can you do by when? Now I don't mind reframing deadlines and what needs to be made up, and what I might excuse, like a small daily assignment. I might say, let me just excuse this because we're headed towards some big project kind of assignment or some big test. So let's talk about, all right, when can we get that done? And negotiation is not quite the right word, but yeah, in that kind of situation, it's okay.
It's flexibility, right? Because
Yeah.
every student is different. We understand that. And
Yeah.
and a little bit of flexibility on the teacher's end, that goes a long way.
Yeah, that's the right word, flexibility, right? So that's, I guess that's the kindness part of kindly rigid.
Exactly.
Knowing when to lean more toward the kindness and when to lean a little more toward the rigid.